What's up, everybody? I'm Kyle Carlson, and this is the Rollback BMX Podcast, the #1 BMX podcast in the universe, according to me. Today's guest is Brian Kachinsky. Brian is a lifer in the BMX world, and based on how incredibly burly he is on his bike, you'd never guess he's as smart and well-spoken as he is. Sit back, listen up, prepare to get educated. This is the Rollback BMX Podcast with Brian Kachinsky. Brian Kachinsky, welcome to China.
Thanks for having me.
How are you?
Good. It's good to be here. It's it's like such a crazy place, China. It's like the absolute opposite end of the world from what we're used to, but I love it in so many different ways.
You're kind of a China OG.
I've definitely been here a lot. I would say I think I've been here like close to a dozen times, which is insane to think about. But I've never been to Chengdu, where we are now. But
this is your first time in Chengdu?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but I've been to China.
This is your second time this month.
Yeah. I went to to Shanghai or near Shanghai a couple weeks ago. But I love coming here, and it's always such a nice change of pace, I guess, and just one of those kind of. You can just be entertained by just sitting on a street corner and people watching kind of place, just because it's so awesome in some ways. In some way there's obviously things that like the pollution that you don't like about places like this, but man, it's just such an experience. And I always tell people, like friends of mine back home, I'm like, if you ever get the chance, definitely go to China. I'm
good for about a week here, just because that's about as long as it takes for all the craziness to get like a little bit old. And this trip is taking me about 2 weeks, and that's about enough to where I right now I could go home and be happy. But I still love it. It's one of the things that I miss it. When you go like 3 or 4 months after China, you're like, oh, I miss the craziness.
Totally.
Just doing whatever you want. It's just the Wild West.
Yeah, just the adventure of it, and just kind of seeing how they even do just like the basic daily things different. And but yeah, I know what you mean. Like when I look out the window here, for example, and you just see like the smog, and it's just like a blanket over the city. Like I think of back home in Chicago, like I look out and it's just like beautiful, clear visibility, and like Chicago's still a big city, so I wouldn't say the air quality is like grade A, absolutely perfect air or anything. But man, when you're here, you can definitely feel it and see it. And
it's crazy, because there are days when I'm like, oh, it's overcast today. Then I start thinking, I'm like, oh, it's probably not overcast.
Yeah. I've very seldom seen like clear blue skies here, which is unfortunate, but it exists when you get outside of the city.
And it's crazy, because we were having a conversation the other day about the most polluted cities in the world, and there are some places, I believe, in India that are like three or four times more polluted than it is here.
Yeah.
And this is like 5 times more than New York or something.
Right.
So it's like, it's crazy when it's just like that level of pollution. Like if we're 5 times more in New York, and you can get that much more than this, like how do people even live there?
Yeah, it is incredible. And like they still have, there's some places that are really polluted that still have like a long life expectancy, because I always just am curious. Like I always look up that stuff, just life expectancy by country. And it's pretty amazing. It kind of makes you realize as humans how resilient humans can be. It's
also adaptation.
Yeah, totally. I mean, they just their body, their immune system, whatever, just kind of adapts to it. And I think they do other healthy practices that they walk a lot, they ride bikes a lot, they get outside, they do like group dances at night out in the streets and things like that. It's things like that I think maybe offset some of the bad shit that you see, like some of the maybe toxins they're breathing in or whatever. So it's it's a give and take. So
I always hear theories about one of the problems in the United States being that people don't get outside enough, vitamin D and whatnot. I wonder how that evens out when it's an incredibly polluted place. Like, do you get the benefits from being outside, or do they contradict each other? You know what I mean?
I wonder, because it is really you wouldn't think that life could exist if it's like smoggy all the time or whatever, or that it would things would be like drastically cut short, but somehow it's not. And I see, you look outside and you do see like some nice lush green trees and grass too.
Yeah. So I wonder if it's like you go to Mexico and you drink the water and you're dying, but the local Mexicans drink the water and they're fine.
Right. I think about that all the time.
It's just like their body's just good with it.
Right. And by being too clean, sometimes we're just hurting ourselves and like almost making ourselves more unhealthy. I think about that all the time. Like in Nicaragua, for example, we were like, we would buy bottled water because you absolutely had to. But then the locals we were riding with were just drinking out of a hose outside, just drinking whatever water. So it's like, definitely I try to get a balance where, like, of course I wash my hands and keep clean, but at the same time I'm not like maybe a germaphobe like I was a little bit when I was growing up or something like that. So
yeah, I think seeing the world kind of brings that out of you. You gotta chill out a little bit, man.
Yeah, when you're traveling, it's just there's just nothing you can do a lot of times.
So you are officially back in Chicago.
Yeah,
you lived in the DC area for a couple years.
Yeah, my wife had a job out there that was it was always going to be temporary. So
was she still in school out there?
No, well, technically no, but she was basically doing like what they call a fellowship in medicine. So she was just doing a training program where she was like a certified, she's a certified doctor, surgeon, licensed and everything. But by doing this fellowship, it kind of elevates you to a new level. It's basically kind of like making you even more specialized. It would be like I would say, like, let's say you're a vert rider and you all of a sudden you go and you study under Jamie Bestwick for 2 years. All of a sudden you're going to be a way better vert rider, in like that segment of BMX, and so as well as you'd probably be cooler. Shout out to Jamie, but great guy. Just by hanging out with him for 2 years would have much more benefits than bike riding.
So what does your wife do exactly?
She's a surgeon, so she does general surgery. So she doesn't do like orthopedics like you'd think of, like knee surgeries or elbows, shoulders, things like that.
So what does she do?
She does I kind of describe it as like maybe like the belly button up to the neck, kind of, or maybe actually belly button up to the head, so minus the heart. So she doesn't do heart surgery or like brain surgery or orthopedic.
Like is she the lady that would take out your gallbladder?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So she gallbladder, a lot of cancer stuff when it has to do with like the stomach or intestines or even like thyroid and like things like that. But sometimes that's like head and neck stuff as well. It's really interesting to learn about because medicine is so specialized like anything else, but she luckily has trained under some people who are best, like some of the best in the world at what they do.
Yeah.
Like people who have invented procedures and stuff like that, kind of like inventing tricks, like you get to name the procedure after you. And
it would be like training under Adam Strebe.
Learning
the Iron Monkey.
Right. So it's kind of like... really interesting though, because she also trained under another doctor who's like an all-around badass. Like he was back in Chicago, but she trained under him, and he could like essentially take care of, I mean, I can't say everything, but like almost everything that would come in. But he was also an older guy. He was like in his mid-60s or is in his mid-60s. And so he had like obviously over the years seen a million different things, and she would just describe him as like, such an OG, essentially. Just like he would have an answer for everything and a solution for everything, and he had seen everything. So it's just interesting to learn about. I feel like just by hanging out with my wife so much and asking her a million questions that I almost have like a little bit of a default medical degree, even though I, of course, like am no expert, but I can definitely like speak the language a little bit, and I just love to ask questions and learn about it. So
for BMX riders out there who live off a BMX rider's wage and really need to marry a doctor, what sort of advice would you give them?
I would say honestly, like when you're like, and I'd say that like not even relationship wise, but like even friendship wise, like I think it's always important and cool to have
friends that are going to be rich.
No, not at all. Like friends that, because my wife and I, like, we met in college, like when we were college kids, and we were like at a totally different point in life, and that's like where we first met each other at the University of Wisconsin. Then we kind of went our separate ways in life, and like kept in touch here and there. But like she went on to do medical school and residency and all that stuff.
And you went to China.
And I obviously went like the BMX route, but it's cool because we kept in touch, and we reunited when she got placed just kind of by chance in Chicago to do her surgery training. So she was new to the city, and we knew each other from back in the day, and she was like, "Hey, I'm new to Chicago, just like kind of want to get familiar with the city. I don't know anyone here," and we ended up like reconnecting and rekindling, and before you know it, years went by and we got married. So it's just awesome because I think having someone, I mean, she's so supportive with everything I do, whether it's BMX or anything that I want to do, but also I think we're a good balance for each other because she's surrounded by medicine all day. So, and I'm surrounded by, you know, typically bikes all day. So it's nice when we talk. Of course, we'll talk about BMX once in a while. We'll talk about medicine once in a while, because I'm always curious about what she did and what surgeries she did that day. But I think it's awesome that we like can just completely throw both those things out the window and just talk about something completely unrelated. And but yeah, I mean, I have so much respect for her and everyone else in the medical community. And
how old's your wife?
She's like a year and a half younger than me, so she just turned 35.
So she's probably been going to school nonstop her entire life.
Right, yeah. And that's
hardcore, man.
It is, I mean, the rigorous training they put them through is like unlike anything I've ever seen from anything else in my life. Or, you know, I feel like I have friends that do a little bit of everything, career-wise, and I've never seen, I mean, between the hours and the stress and like what you have to know off the top of your head, you know, right away to solve a problem. Of course, nowadays you have tools like the internet and things you can look up quick, but you know, she's on call a lot, so we'll be like dead asleep at night, and she'll get a call at 3 a.m, and she's got to like snap out of that sleep and wake up and just and start rattling off orders. Like, you know, she'll be like, okay, what's the problem? You know, what's the patient's, you know, what's their vital signs? You know, what's their heart rate and their blood pressure? Okay, what medications are they on? Okay, like now, you know, do this, do that. I'll be there in 15 minutes, and you know, just hang tight, and you know, she'll basically jump out of bed and have to go in and go do surgery. You know, so it's and you just have to be like sharp as a tack, but they train you for that, you know. Yeah. And it's but man, it is like so rigorous.
Is the on-call thing partially because she's young and new? Does that go away with time, or is that just part of the gig?
It depends. It depends on what she chose. Actually, the field that she's in, because she can do a lot more elective cases, meaning she can essentially make her schedule and do the surgeries when she wants to.
Gotcha.
But there's still like, it's basically a team of surgeons that she works with, so they kind of share that responsibility of like, okay, one person needs to be on call every single night, at least, you know, one or two. They basically have like a call and then a backup doctor that.
Does she have nights where she's on call and doesn't get called?
Yeah,
gets to sleep through the night and everything's great.
Yeah, it's pretty rare, but yeah, or maybe her phone will only ring once or twice, and then there's other times where it'll ring like every half an hour, and it's like crazy. But it's it's really interesting. It's like I said, they're just badasses. I mean, they and it's, I mean, she's seen and done the craziest stuff, and you know, I think like you know, obviously, like I've seen and experienced a whole different set of things in my life, like with travels and bike riding and whatever, and doing scary things on a bike or traveling to crazy places. But the things she's, you know, seen and remedied with her own two hands and with her brain is just like incredible. And it's got to be incredibly satisfying. Of course, there's a sad side to it. Like, you see a lot of sad things.
So she has to have lost patients before, right?
Yeah.
How did she deal with that?
A very, very regular occurrence, unfortunately, because sometimes, you know, you do all you can, and sometimes all you can isn't enough. And that's another thing that I love about her, and how much, like, a thing that I respect is just how she, you know, she can take those things and you know, you basically take them in stride and just, I guess, find comfort in the fact that you know, you did all you could, and you've also helped people. It's like so many, you know, for the amount of people she's lost, there's so many people she's helped. You know what I mean? So it's like that.
It's got to be hard to get yourself in that place mentally.
Extreme, yeah. And then, of course, you know, talking to the families and stuff when that stuff's going down is always tricky. And yeah, she's, I mean, like I said, they train you to do crazy procedures and know all this stuff, and like actually do like technically difficult things, but also you're also like a counselor, and you're a you know, you're an advisor, and you're, you know, all these different things like that sort of come with the territory. So yeah, it's just probably one of the most noble things I think anyone could do. So
well, congratulations on marrying a doctor.
Thanks.
That's a lifelong goal.
I am definitely a lucky man. She's awesome. So.
How is life back in Chicago? Did you always want to end up back there? I know you were kind of feeling, kind of humoring a lot of different locations. I know she had offers a lot of places.
Right. Yeah. So it finally came to the time when her training was coming to an end, and it's kind of like the world was our oyster. We could go wherever we wanted, but. You know, home is kind of where a lot of your friends are, and where you have like, some roots, and I think Chicago, I lived there for almost 10 years before we moved out east for a couple of years, and so it really felt like home. And I enjoyed my time out on the East Coast. It was incredible. I mean, through BMX I had instant friends, you know, like shout out to everyone in the Baltimore, DC area. Like it was so amazing that I instantly had like a crew of friends to ride with, hang out with. That was a huge blessing. But you know, Chicago just feels like home, and it's a city that I've always enjoyed, and always thought that it's just one of those places that's always inspiring, and the people I meet, and the just kind of things that there's so many things to do and so many things to see and learn, and just a lot of like motivated people there, which I think is huge. That's a huge thing for me. And of course there's the winters and shitty things like that, but all the other things make up for it. And it's just it's an amazing city. But you know, we looked at some other places, like Southern California was an option, and we even thought about like Colorado and the Northwest, and they're all like awesome places. I was kind of like, you know, wherever we end up, like I told her, I was like, I want you to be happy. I want you to you've worked so hard and long for this. I want you to have the job that you want to do.
Was her thought process with this job, this is long term, she is going to be in Chicago for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, for now. I mean, it's nothing is definitely, you know, nothing's guaranteed, but she found a position that you know, she'd be doing almost, you know, I'd say like 90% of what she wanted to do. So
always got to make some sacrifices, right?
Yeah, but so it's just I'm really fortunate that we ended up there, and a lot of her family's on the West Coast, so like in Arizona and then California. You
guys got married in Arizona, right?
Yeah. So she's from Phoenix originally.
Okay,
so a lot of her family was there.
So she's from Phoenix before she went to the University of Wisconsin.
Yeah,
where you met her. Okay.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so actually, it's nice that her family's in Phoenix, because it's such a rad place to visit, and like, she grew up there and she's kind of over it, so she was like, I don't necessarily want to live in Arizona, but it's so great to visit there in the winter or any time of year. Really, there's so much cool stuff to ride and see and do, and we've gotten really into like hiking and outdoor stuff, so Arizona's awesome for that as well.
Arizona's a cool state, man.
Yeah.
You kind of get a little bit blinded by just being in Phoenix, but like a couple hours any which direction is like, oh, like I'm in the mountains. You know what I mean? There's cool stuff, and
down to Tucson or up to like Prescott, Flagstaff area.
Yeah,
like all that. I mean, you can have like a lot of different stuff within a day's drive. So
congratulations on being back in Chicago.
Thanks.
I think you secretly always wanted that.
Yeah. I think it's man, it's crazy because I only got to visit there like a few times while I was gone. So it's crazy how things change in like just a couple of years. Like new stuff gets built, or and even riding wise, like spot wise, you know, stuff like new spots pop up or old spots disappear. And but it's cool. There's a cool BMX scene. There's definitely cool stuff to ride.
Who are some of the guys that hold it down in the city? Who's actually in Chicago? I know there's a lot of guys in the surrounding area that I associate with Chicago.
Yeah. So rider, like there's Timmy Theus.
He's actually in Chicago.
Yeah, he lives in the city, and
he had some dope clips in the new Cult video.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen much from him for a hot minute, and he had some really cool stuff in there.
Yeah, and he shreds. He's always like fun to ride with, and he's just so talented. Like he's always had crazy like hops and pop. Yep. You know, he's always had like really good bar spins, really good tail whips. But since I was gone, he's gotten like twice as good at riding tranny. So when I went to the Wilson skate park, which is like a concrete bowl, I saw him ride after like 2 years. I hadn't seen him ride there, and I was like, dude, Timmy, you are like you know, you've like unlocked this new level of like transition riding that I didn't know I had in. I mean, I guess I like knew he could do whatever the hell he wanted because he's so good. But it's just cool to see. You know, it's cool to see people like evolve and, you know, just embrace whatever they're doing. And that kind of like segues into like BMX for me. You know, like what motivates me is that there's just so much to do on a bike, and so much like obviously like I like riding street. You know, like that's what motivates me the most. And I would say like my main motivator is spots that I find, and you know, the basically like the interpretation of those spots, you know. And a lot of times like I'll just be pedaling around and kind of cruising around, and you'll find something that just like instantly makes you feel like you're like 14 again, and you're like, oh my god, I can't wait to ride this, you know. And that's like, because that's what I love about street riding, is like you never know what's going to be around the next corner, or just like you can always, when you learn something new or see something in a different way, it just becomes like so much more exciting. So, you know, I live in a big city where stuff's always changing and there's always stuff to ride, and I obviously get to travel a lot too, which is really exciting. You know, it's just that's like the main motivator to me, is like just spots that I find and seeking those out, riding them. But I also love a good day at the skate park as well. And like, it's just so funny. Sometimes people who aren't familiar with BMX are like, oh, do you have like a best trick that you do, or like what's your hardest trick? And I really don't. I really don't. I don't have an answer for that, because it's always like, you know, it's always like changing, or just hard to describe, obviously, to someone who doesn't ride. But it's always a nice challenge to try to describe it. You know, like turn downs, for example, turn downs and look backs. Like I've learned those within the last year and a half, kind of. Some days I do them shitty, and then other days like they're feeling pretty good. But like turn down, it's something that, like, you know, 14-year-old kids can do, no problem.
Some kids can just like, do.
Yeah, like, yeah. And it was just one of those tricks that like I always found peace in, that like Ruben Alcantara couldn't really do a turn down that he was happy with. So I was like, okay, well, if he can't, you know, he's like one of the most stylish dudes ever, so if he can't do it, like, I guess, you know, I shouldn't feel too bad about myself. But I love that, like, you know, I can go to the skate park, you know, after riding like 20 some years that I've ridden, and I can just be like, I'm going to learn turn downs today, or like work on them and see if I can like figure it out, you know. And there's just always something there, and it doesn't always have to be like death defying, or you know, not always something that necessarily has to get like your heart racing, but it can just be something that like gets the wheels turning upstairs, where you're just like,
progress. Okay,
yeah, maybe I'm like, you know, not sticking this leg out enough, and like need to put, you know, whatever, push my bars this way. It's just that's what's awesome about BMX. I think it's just so endless, and like it's just a matter of finding your motivation. And I'm fortunate enough to have found that, kind of refound that a number of times, you know. So
good turn down story. You might already know this, but Dennis Anderson was a pretty well established, talented rider before he learned turn downs, which might surprise people, because he does them both ways and stuff. And he ended up learning them into a foam pit.
Wow.
I think it was Woodward West, just like crazy. Had to go full speed, high as hell. Yeah, he didn't learn turn downs till he was maybe 18 or something, which seems young, but I mean,
well, he came on the scene,
but he was a pro, like legit pro at 15.
Right. I was going to say he came on the scene like really, really young. Wow, I didn't know that.
And even today, every once in a while, he'll struggle with one that's just like, oh yeah, I kind of forget that you're not that's something you had to work for. You're not the 13-year-old kid that just comes from racing and hopped on a box jump and can turn down, like so many kids can.
Yeah,
pisses me off.
Yeah. Totally. I think that's the coolest thing about BMX, is that even like when I went to Woodward in the summer, I learned stuff from campers, taught things to campers. And you know, even though I was the visiting pro and they were the 16-year-old camper, it's like we're just riding all day, like motivating each other. And you know, I'm like getting them to jump some gap or like hop on some rail, and you know, they're turning me, or they're like teaching me how to, like, you know, like I said, like improve my tabletop or turn down or whatever it is. So I think it's just such a rad thing. And
kids are good these days.
Yeah,
it's so crazy,
man. It's so awesome too, because two things, I think. Well, bicycles in general have gotten better.
Lighter, more comfortable.
Yes, and like I just think about like what I started out on, and anyone who grew up reading, anyone listening to this who grew up in like, you know, especially mid 90s. I grew up in like, started riding in like early to mid 90s, like 94, possibly 95 ish, and my bike was so heavy, man. It was like 50 pounds. And
what was your first? Do you remember? Or your first like real bike, like not like your
right? I had a GT Vertigo that was like all chromed out, and then that soon
full circle.
Yeah, exactly. that was like kind of my first. I consider that like my first real BMX bike, and then I had a aftermarket. It was a weird time. Powerlight. This brand isn't even going to be relevant to some of you kids out there, but Powerlight came out with a freestyle frame that was like.
Do they exist in race anymore, or do they not exist at all?
I have no idea, but they had this like little spurt where they made a freestyle frame, and it was slightly cheaper than like your standard or your S&M, and so I
probably for good reason.
Yeah, and so I bought that because it had like 1/4-inch dropouts, because I started grinding everything almost right away,
destroying shit.
And I was just destroying axles and dropouts and stuff, and so that lasted only a little while, and then I got a S&M dirt bike, and then shortly after that I got a standard STA.
That had to be the hot product up your way, right?
Yeah,
Midwest,
Midwest
had to have a standard.
Yeah, Midwest like standard definitely had a stronghold, that bike lasted me a long time. It was
did you ride for Standard?
I did. Yeah,
that was my
first bike sponsor. Yeah, so I rode for them from, I guess like 2000. Actually, 2000 was when they first started sending me frames. So it was like 2000 to 2003, 4-ish. Oh yeah, it was summer of 2000. Wait, I'm sorry, I'm messing my years up, but somewhere in that range. Was when I got on DK after that, and then rode for them for years, and then I've been on GT now for going on 4 years.
Was it a bitter end with DK?
No, not at all.
I always saw that as a lifer thing. I was kind of surprised to see you go.
Yeah,
but I know that brand had gone through a lot of changes behind the scenes.
For sure. It was it was actually amazing, and I drove all the way there to talk with them about it as well, just because I just like been, we'd had such a good relationship for such a long time, and there was just some things that like maybe didn't happen that I wanted to happen, or I tried to make happen for. You
wanted
years,
that dump truck full of money and ran out of gas.
No, it was, but it was great. I mean, I'm still friends with them, and definitely good guys. I think some of it was like I was like super psyched to be part of the team, because it was like, basically at the time it was like Drew, Bestwick, and myself, and
Nina.
Right? At the end there, like Nina didn't ride for them, I don't think, but she was on a large majority of the time that I was on.
Were you off before Bestwick?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well before.
So Nina was off, then you were off, then Jamie was off.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But no, it was cool, because I'm like, damn, like look at my teammates, they're badass. But the only, I guess, downside to that was that it's like, if we go on a trip, for example, it's not like it's not like, I mean, Jamie can ride street, Drew can definitely fucking kill it too, and it was like and I looked up to those guys both as people and riders, but it wasn't like I'd really become like a street rider. Like that was my main motivation.
That's what's going to make you the happiest.
If I went on a trip, especially like somewhere that had really good street, like that's pretty much what I'm going to want to do. I definitely don't mind riding a skate park, and I ride skate parks quite often, but street's really like my main, like what motivates me and inspires me. So that was just kind of the thing. It was like that sort of team aspect of like, that GT had that I was like, dang, like a crew that we can go on trips together and just like really vibe off each other on the streets. And it was cool because Ben Ward had just come aboard with GT, and so it was cool because he, I guess prior to that I would have had to do some more research. But once I knew that he was aboard and that he had already,
it's in good hands.
that he had already like designed amazing stuff for other companies, that I knew that it was going to be like quality stuff that was coming down the pipeline.
You could feel comfortable riding.
Right,
you wouldn't have to worry.
And I would even say that my first package that I got from them like had like 50% of stuff that I liked and another 50% where I was like, I don't know. But it was crazy because only like 6 months went by when like almost everything changed, and it was like all the stuff was 100% high quality, like stuff that I trusted and stuff that that even I had a say in as well, which is cool. And I think that's always really important as a team rider. Like you don't want to just be the guy who like slaps a sticker on his bike and on his helmet and like just goes and whatever, do
that's
your
who's
thing,
paying me. Let's party.
Yeah, exactly. It's I always like to be a part of it and be a team player
who was on GT when you got on?
It was Rob Wise and Jeremiah Smith were like the two others. Okay. Yeah, so it was like the first trip we did was like a month after I got on. We went out to California and it was just like hammer time. It was like we went to different spots and and just like, again, like I said, just like the vibe was incredible. Like we all were kind of on the same page, but doing different stuff. And obviously Jeremiah and Rob are like both incredible. So
both kind of unsung heroes of the game.
Oh, for sure. Sure. I mean, Rob,
if you know, you know.
yeah. Rob went on he was a surprise guest on our GT trip to Taiwan last year.
Which was awesome, yeah.
Dude, it was incredible. Like no one knew he was coming. And I was the first to see him at the airport, and because we were on the same flight going over, and I was like, man, is that Rob Wise right there? Like in like waiting in line to get on the same flight I'm getting on, and so totally unexpected, and he just shut it down. I mean, he like would come to the craziest setups, and Rob style, like cool as a cucumber, just like, yeah, I'm gonna do this, and you're like, what? Like if I was even thinking about doing that, I would have to like, I'd be like sweating bullets, nervous, scared, whatever. Rob's just like confident, he's just confident, strong, talented. Like he's just a good bike rider, and
just
like
a cool dude.
Yeah,
everything about that dude is cool.
Yeah, just chill, super chill too. He wasn't like never high stress or anything like that. Just
so I assume you're real psyched and everything at GT and plan on hanging out as long as they'll have you.
Yeah, definitely. And I got to thank everyone there for just being amazing. With through good times and bad. And I think it's just an honor to have signature anything, but I have like signature stem, signature seat, signature frame, and then also signature completes, which like signature completes are a whole new realm for me, like something I'd never had before GT. And I always like wondered, I always wondered, completes these days, like, can you really take them out of the box and ride them? And we just put that to the test. Like a few months back, we went out to California and rode our 2019 completes, and it was a really cool experience because they basically flew us out to California with no bike, which was weird because you're flying for a BMX trip with no bike. They were like, yeah, bring pegs because you're gonna want like whatever pegs you prefer, and but just bring pegs and tools and that's it, you're good. And so we did that, and it was cool, like opening the box and seeing our new completes for the first time. It was like Dan Conway, Albert Mercado, and myself, and we like just actually genuinely opening the box and being like, damn, like this looks so much better in person than it does like on the computer screen that we've seen it on now. So
yeah.
Then we proceeded to like put them together and hammer on them in the streets for like 4 days, and they passed with flying colors. Like they held up really, really nice. So of course, like it's still not the same as my bike, like my bike with my like signature frame and everything, and you like really dial things in. Your bike's, as a BMX rider, your bike's like an extension of yourself. So putting together a whole new complete, obviously like the spokes kind of came loose after a little while. You had to tighten those up, and all the kind of like
there's inevitables.
All right, the growing pains that come with a complete, or that come with a brand new bike or brand new anything. But man, it was sick because at first I was like, okay, this is cool, but like no pressure. I'm not going to go too hard because you're on a complete. And after 4 days, like I ended up like doing some stuff that really scared me and that I would be hyped to do even on my own bike.
Yeah.
It was cool to like be in the streets and like doing those things and like scaring yourself a little bit, but like never thinking about the bike really. Like never, you know what I mean? After a while you develop that trust, and I was like, I was never at any point was I like, oh, can like my bike handle this?
You're worried about you. You're not worried about the bike.
Yeah, it was cool. So in the last day, I was like, this just feels like a normal trip, even though we're on like, bikes that people can just buy straight off the shelf. So, I mean,
what's the price point of the bikes you guys are riding? Is it like a $500-$600 bike?
Yeah, okay. Right in between there.
And that's the highest end,
right?
The top.
Yeah.
Okay.
We were all riding our highest end, so it had like.
But you have like what, 3 bikes? Is that correct?
I have 2.
Okay.
And then I think Conway has a couple, and then Albert has one. But then there's also a box palm one, which is Albert's. I guess Albert's art project / pseudonym. Which like shout out to Albert in general, because those bikes look really, really rad. He's obviously
he's a brilliant guy,
talented
really
human
brilliant
being.
Guy.
Yeah. And then Conway is like the motivator. Like he's the dude who will first thing of the day, like one of the days, like he wanted there, we saw a picture of this huge like 21 stair rail, and he was like, let's go to that thing today, like first thing, you know. And it was cool because the day before, like I kind of felt like the motivator because we went to a rail manual that I did right away, like before lunchtime. But then the next day, like, and I would say typical days with Conway, even when I would ride with him on the East Coast, it's like he's the dude who he'll tell you, I'll be there, I'll be at the spot at 9 a.m., like meet up, you know. And typically with BMXers, you think like, okay, that means
10:30, 11.
Yeah. But no, dude, he'll be there and he'll just get the party started. And so
that's respectable.
Yeah, like that. Between him and Albert's like brilliance and creativity, it's just and talent. Obviously, it's just such an awesome squad.
You know, Albert talks about GT in a very similar way to you do. Just feels very well taken care of and very happy there. So it's good to hear. It's good to hear, you know, I'm talking behind the scenes.
Yeah.
You know, off the record, you know, you have so many conversations with guys that are just bummed.
Yeah.
Just people aren't coming through. The checks don't cash. They're not getting this plane ticket they're supposed to get. They just can't get anywhere. So it's nice to hear from multiple perspectives that these guys are like, no, GT's dope. Like Everybody literally seems happy on and off camera.
Yeah. And
which is awesome.
We get to do like really cool. We get to do really cool shit. Like, I mean, a whole team trip to Taiwan, you know, it was like incredible. Yeah. It was like just a whole new, we were all just so excited because it's a whole new land and stuff like that. But, and totally different spots. And, you know, there's so many cool things. I think another thing they do really well is like not biting off more than they can chew and not like growing too fast or growing, you know, they're, you know, obviously like a bigger company because they have like Cannondale under their same umbrella and stuff like that. But, you know, their BMX squad, and even GT itself, you know, underneath that umbrella is actually like a pretty small, like smallish, tight knit group, you know, and they, just get things done, and they all like, everyone, like, I think everyone in that office rides bikes, and a lot of them ride BMX, you know, so, even the people who do the mountain bike designing and all that kind of stuff, like they all ride mountain bikes, and they all, you know, so it's not like a, you know, everyone gets it, which is awesome. And then if they don't get it, they're not going to like pretend like they do. They're going to reach out to Ben, or they're going to reach out to the team and say like, hey, how should we do these things? Or like, you know, which image should we use, or which, you know, so it's cool. It's awesome like that, where they just do things right. So I
got a couple topics I wanted to converse with you about. I kind of keep going off on random conversations because you're such a pleasant man to talk to. One thing I wanted to run by you, and I don't know if you have any thoughts or opinions on this. I had this conversation with somebody, and I can't remember who it was off the top of my head, and it wasn't in a negative way at all, but we were talking about head injuries, and someone was like, it's so weird because Kachinsky has hit his head a lot, it seems, but you seem incredibly sharp. You don't seem to miss a beat. You seem like one of the more obviously you're more educated. You have a diploma. You put in the time, but still well spoken and on top of things. What's your take on the head injury thing? Do you ever feel like it affects you? Am I mistaken in thinking you've had?
You know what? I think
you've been knocked out more than the average man your age.
Yeah, but you know what? I'm fortunate in that I haven't had like some like really severe concussions. I've definitely gotten knocked around a lot, and that even goes before BMX. Like
hockey,
I grew up playing hockey, yeah. So that's like obviously a really rough sport where you get knocked around a lot. And yeah, it's definitely, I would say head injuries are definitely the scariest. They're definitely the scariest type of injury, just because there's so much unknown. You know, if you go and you like break your foot. You go to the doctor, they x-ray your foot, you know, your foot's broken, they tell you 6 to 8 weeks, you should be all right. You know, with head injuries, it's, there's just so much unknown. You know, you get your bell rung and you're kind of like, you feel a little bit dazed, or you don't really feel right for, you know, like a couple, maybe just a couple minutes, and then you feel all right. But that doesn't necessarily mean you're healed, you know? And so, it's definitely a scary thing. And I think that, I feel lucky, and I'm glad that I now wear a helmet all the time. But I would suggest that to people, but I wouldn't really preach it, because people can do what they want. I do think that like helmets during events or at people's parks or whatever, like you should do that if you're under someone's roof. I kind of talk about it like if you're walking into someone's house and they ask you to take your shoes off, like you're a guest at their house, you take your shoes off. You know, it's kind of like if you're at someone's park or whatever, and like, you know, you like back when I had the bakery, even like if I would have asked, I didn't require people to wear helmets, but if I did, I would hope that people would respect that, you know. And I think that when you're out, like when you leave your house in the morning and you're out riding the streets or wherever you're riding, you know, kind of on your own terms. You know, you can do what you want. You can make your own choices. I came to a point where, well, I'll tell you my main turning point with the helmet thing was that I got asked to go on, Greg Illingworth asked me to go on his, a trip for his Make It Happen project. And it was a big video project, you know, called Make It Happen. And we basically were going to go to China and Hong Kong on like a 2-week trip. We were going to go to Hong Kong, Shenzhen, and Guangzhou. So like these 3 crazy cities that I'd never been to. Yeah, that I'd never been to. And
who was the crew? You, Greg, and
it was Josh Harrington and Ed Zunda. And then this other guy, George Jackson, was with us for a little bit, but George Marshall was shooting the photos, and then Will Evans was doing all the filming. So
hell of a crew.
Yeah, man, it was incredible. And then so he asked me, "Do you want to go?" And I said, "Yeah, of course. That sounds incredible. Thanks so much for thinking of me. I'm honored." And then we hang up, and he calls me back, and he was like, or maybe he texted me or something. He's like, "Hey, so one more thing I forgot to mention. You'd have to wear a helmet." And this is actually before I rode for GT, and and he was like, "You have to wear a helmet. How do you feel about that?"
Is that because was Bell or somebody sponsoring the project?
Yeah, and Mongoose was too. And they like helmets in all of their media. So it was just an agreement with the sponsorships, and it wasn't like we had to wear Bell helmets or anything like that, or have to wear a certain type of helmet. But they were just like
more of a morality thing.
For a moment, I did think about it because I was like, man, I don't really like people telling me what to do. Like, I really want to make my own decisions. But then I came to my senses. I was like, am I really going to pass up a free 2-week trip to Asia because of a fucking helmet? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I'm going to ride the most incredible spots. Like, those spots are going to feel amazing no matter if I'm waiting. Like, it's going to be incredible to explore in whether I'm wearing a helmet or not. But that was the first time I wore a helmet riding street, you know, and I thought, and it was kind of a turning point that opened the door for GT, because they require a helmet for any media that they put out. So if they put out that's not to say like they require me to wear a helmet when I'm going to the skate park on any given day, but if they're going to use any footage or photos, you know, they want a helmet on, which it's just their company policy, which I understand and respect.
I know Mongoose has a similar deal, and I remember them telling me, I think Mongoose and GT are same parent company, I believe.
Yeah, they're
ran separately.
Right.
But I think it was a situation where somebody had a photo or a video clip somewhere they could have made a bonus off of, and like they weren't pissed they weren't wearing a helmet, but they didn't make a bonus because they weren't wearing a helmet.
Right.
Oh, you would have gotten $200 for this, but you're not wearing a helmet, so you don't.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a similar concept with GT, but I'm like, yeah, I get that.
Yeah, not really. They just say like, hey, that clip on Instagram that you posted, like, we can't use that, or that you sent us, we can't use that because you don't have a helmet, kind of thing. And I just feel like I'm like, am I gonna wear one and, basically learn from what I've seen others go through, or am I just going to learn the hard way and have to be forced to wear one someday because because something happens? Not to say something can't happen now, it's BMX is what it is, and life in general can be dangerous. But yeah, I think head injuries are definitely serious. They're definitely something to be taken seriously, and I'm glad that even contests like the like FIS and UCI stuff, like they take concussions really seriously.
Yes.
That if a guy gets knocked out, like they basically don't let them ride if they don't pass, certain, pretty much don't let them ride for the rest of the event, but they definitely have to pass like certain medical exams and stuff like that to be able to ride again that day or that weekend. But yeah, it's something that it's unfortunate that they do happen, but they're going to happen. I definitely feel like, luckily, they haven't affected me that much, and I think like of course, like anytime I've hit my head, I've definitely had times where I felt like shit the next day, or your head's hurting for a day or whatever. But there was also another thing where I'd hit my head enough to where I had gotten like stitches or staples, like so many times, and in CT scans and like all this stuff, like I'm getting an average of like a CT a year, you know, like and I'm paying for this. Like this is all like money. Like my sponsors aren't paying for this. Like the people, like the hardcore people that don't want to see me in a helmet aren't paying for this. Like I am paying for this $1,000 scan and these staples and those stitches. And I mean, I had even gotten like staples in my head when I was wearing a helmet at Woodward one year when we were filming a video. So like, so yeah, it was cool. I obviously like ran it by some people, like some close friends before I like made the conscious decisions to do it, just because I'm like, hey, what do you think? And it was funny because almost all my friends were like, yeah, we think it's a good idea. You know what I mean? Like no one was really like, was like, oh man, you know,
that's pretty lame.
Keep it real. Yeah. But yeah, I think in regards to CTE and things like that, that's obviously a hot topic and something that's still being researched. I definitely think that's a real thing and something that just needs to be studied more. However, I don't always think that is like the absolute reason for everything bad that happens. I think there's other things that need to be addressed in regards to just like mental health that might not even be related to CTE or concussions and things like that. Like I just think like you know, there's a lot of people out there that just that need good people to talk to and need to be helped through hard times and things like that. So I don't necessarily always like CTE being used as a scapegoat for everything, but it's a for sure real thing, and it's for sure unfortunately like affected a lot of people's lives, both in BMX and, you know, of course like football and other sports and stuff like that. And I really hope that it gets studied more and that it gets that we just find out more about it, because there's just so much. But I also don't want to like, I think it's irresponsible of us to throw the blame of everything that happens. Kind of
a big blanket term. Anything bad that happens.
Right,
you played a sport once?
Oh, he played, yeah. Oh, he hit his head or hit his head a bunch of times. It's like, you know, I mean, yes, that is definitely a real thing, but there's a lot of other things out there between depression and substance abuse and like, I mean, yeah, everything, you know, life's hard, you know, life's hard sometimes, and like people go through a lot of shit. So, I just think in general, you know, like take care of yourself, take care of your friends, take care of your family, like just, you know, as much as you can. And, yeah, it's, I'm just thankful to, you know, to still essentially have my health. And I think the fact that, you know, when you talk about being like mentally sharp, I think it's just the fact that I'm like interested in a million different things, and I'm always like curious and learning and whatever, both in bike riding and outside of bike riding. So I just think things like that, like just always learning and always trying to progress and stuff.
But you feel good?
Yeah, definitely.
Good.
Yeah,
good.
I think obviously like I said, I have a real supportive wife as well, which oh man, she's helped me through.
She's probably pretty hardcore on health stuff too, I would imagine, right?
She's but you know what, she likes to eat bacon, you know, and she likes to, she's like she'll have a donut once in a while. I'm like, it's not like she's you know, don't eat this, don't eat that, but she's sensible about it and smart about it. You got to live too. You know?
I like to think she'd yell at you for not wearing a helmet.
Yeah, no, totally. She's definitely said stuff. She's worked in trauma and ER.
Probably seen some crazy shit.
Oh yeah. And in Chicago, you know, like she would see like some hospitals she worked at. She would see a gunshot wound or a stabbing every single day.
That's so crazy.
Other gunshot or other hospitals she would see, like, you know, in addition to like gunshot wounds and crazy stuff like that, she would see head injuries and she would see the result of that. And like, you can't unsee that once you have, you know, and you can't help but think. So yeah, she's definitely glad. And you know, I feel a responsibility for that too. You know, I want to be there to help her when she needs help with things. And so
absolutely,
it's definitely a give and take, you know, and it's yeah. So
what helmet do you ride in?
I just ride in a ProTech. So
okay.
Is
that certified?
No, actually. Okay. So I actually want to explore some other certified helmets, because in the last one I even tried, like I felt didn't quite fit right, and I know some new ones have come out since then, so I want to explore. I know like Shadow has a new one, and some other, like lots of companies are always kind of innovating and whatever. But yeah, it's about time I get one. So that's definitely high on the list of priorities.
And I think they're getting more and more decent. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like for the longest time,
and they're light
the
too.
only certified ones look goofy as hell.
Yeah.
And now they're starting to look like, okay, that's okay.
Yeah, because we had to wear certified ones in Dew Tour, and I definitely had no problem riding a helmet in Dew Tour, because again, like, you know, take your shoes off at the door kind of thing, like I was mentioning earlier. But I just kind of put it on and I was like, screw it, this course looks fun, I'm gonna go ride it. And I never really looked in the mirror, and I saw a photo of myself like on a website that night or something, and I was like, damn, dude, that helmet does not look right, you know. But you know, it's still, I still wore it the rest of the weekend. I didn't give a shit because I was just riding, having fun. But you know, you want one that like feels like it's secure, and so yeah, I mean, shout out to anyone who's you know, making progressions with that and making them, you know, a little bit more
listening to the riders. We got to make some decent looking, decent fitting, for sure, certified helmets.
For sure, yeah. And so yeah, there's definitely some that I've seen on people recently that I need to explore. It's a tough thing though, because it's tough to mail order them, because I like to actually try them on.
You need to, man. Yeah.
But yeah, I'm gonna figure that out soon for sure.
I think one thing that's a really positive thing that happened in the world of helmets is enough guys started wearing them regularly that now it's not weird to see a good street clip with a helmet. Guys like Van Homing, guys like Gary Young, that put out so much heavy stuff in helmets.
Right, and think about guys like Mark Burnett or Alex Donachie, like
Justin Spreet.
Yeah. There is no way you can say that those guys aren't badass. You know, like, I think it's just like,
I remember even probably as recent as 6-7 years ago, if you saw a pretty heavy clip of a guy in a helmet on street, it would stand out.
Right.
Now I'm not thinking about that first. I think it's compartmentalized somewhere in my brain now to where it's like, oh, that's just something that happens. Now I'm focused more on the trick, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that enough people have done it to where it's kind of starting to stand out less in a good way.
Yeah. And I get it. I don't always cruise around with one. Sometimes just like if I'm just cruising down the street to the store, you know, like casually, like I may or may not have one on, you know. It's kind of like I should maybe get a little bit better about that, but it's, you know, it's just something that now I feel way more confident when I do have it on. It's kind of like knee pads. I've always worn like something on my knees, even though I don't wear huge knee pads. I just wear like a neoprene sleeve essentially. But just having something there, I'm like, man, I've had 3 ACL surgeries and 7 knee surgeries total. Like, just put some shit on your knees.
Take a step back. Like, I'm not that cool. Nobody's that cool.
Well, and I love being able to take a slam and that not ending my day. Like, I love being able to take a slam and like keep trying and keep going. And I think like I've been like, part of my longevity has just been, you know, where like the fact that I've had so many knee surgeries and been riding so hard for so long. It's like probably those little steps that I've taken, because I've kind of always felt that way about knee pads. Like I've always felt like I can't ride absolutely 100% if I don't have something on my knees. You know? It dates back to all the way when I learned bar spins, because I felt like those big knee pads helped you pinch your seat. So that's why I kind of originally started wearing them. And back in the day, they were like big and ugly, and thankfully they don't look like that anymore.
They were awful, but they worked, man.
They did. And I probably feel much better today because of those. But yeah, it's just one of those things. It's like I feel complete now if I have all those things on, even though I still don't necessarily want to look like a gladiator, you know, when I'm riding. Or
but you want to feel like one. No, you do want to feel like one internally.
Right. Yeah, totally.
Why did the bakery close, and will it ever make a comeback?
It closed, you know, several years ago, like, you know, and it closed basically because of a lease deal gone bad. I had a lease agreement, and I think I know the landlord thought that I was had a lot more money than I had, so we had a lease agreement. Everything was, you know, dotted my I's, crossed my T's. I even had a crazy insurance policy and everything for it, and it came down to the landlord / building owner was just way more rich and powerful than I was, and they felt like I was, my lease wasn't enough. Like, they basically felt like I should be paying more, and they felt like I could afford to pay more.
Now, is this mid-lease or your lease was up?
It was like 3/4 of the way through.
Okay.
So, and it was like Thanksgiving Day that I got the email, so that's a whole nother topic.
That's nice.
Yeah, but you know, it was just weird, and it was just a bummer. You know, it was like he wanted to like quadruple it overnight.
Wow.
Like on like literally, no joke, like a 4-day notice.
That's
and I was
insane.
Like, there's no way. And he was like, "Oh, your sponsors can pay for this, right? You got like relationships with all these companies, like they can kick down, like, you know what I mean? They can kick down $5,000 a month." And I'm like, no.
Hey, you could go
can't.
fuck yourself.
Well, I was like, I'm like, first of all, they can't, and if they did, they would expect a lot for that. Like, you know, if you're kicking down a lot of, you know, I wouldn't have, if I was doing something like that, I wouldn't have any money to pay because I wanted to pay all my filmers, editors, photographers, like all that stuff. You know, I wanted everyone to like at least get a little bit something.
Yeah, you're running like a legitimate
passion.
project.
Yeah, so yeah, everyone that filmed for me and shot photos and stuff, like, you know, all got at least a little something. Like sometimes it was more, sometimes it was less, depending on what event we were doing or whatever. But yeah, it was a bummer. It was a really cool project and definitely a lot of fun and just a dream come true. I always wanted a ramp in my yard growing up, and I never.
That's that on steroids.
Never could really have. I mean, I definitely had some like random stuff built in the yard or driveway growing up, but never had like a crazy setup or anything. And that was like, you know, all these years later, making my childhood dreams come true by basically building my own private skate park. But it was, I'm glad that it achieved its goal in that I think it just pushed things. I think almost everything we put out had something or multiple things progressive about it, like whether it was tricks that had never been done or combos or whatever that had never been done, and just highlighting like different types of street riding, and from technical to burly to everything else. And I think I just wanted a good experience for the pros. I wanted the pros to be put on a pedestal like they should be, because these are some of the best riders in the world. So when you saw those edits, you know, like it was some of the best riders, especially at the time, like best riders in the game, a lot of whom are still like very, very heavy on the scene, you know. And it was yeah, we'd always have fun. It was just cool having an excuse to bring guys to town. The fact that I had guys from like all over the world come to Chicago to ride the place that I created was incredible. But I also can't claim to have created it all on my own. You know, it was like my brainchild and stuff, but definitely had help. Like when I originally wanted to build it, Nate Wessel was like, "I'll come out, you know, just like cover my gas and stuff to get there, and I'll come out and just like
psyched on the project,
do as much as I can for you." Yeah, like talk about like stepping up as a friend. So shout out to him. Shout out to Aaron Bostrom, who helped build the second one because Nate was busy, and Aaron came out and like you know, stayed for a couple weeks and hammered that out. And like everyone who helped me, like Andrew Brady, who helped me with like the site and filming and all
Andrew
that
did
stuff,
a great job creating that aesthetic.
For sure.
Did a really good job with that.
I still love working with him, and he does some stuff for GT, and he does like...
Is he still in Chicago?
Yeah.
So you see him periodically?
Yeah,
That's awesome.
I see him quite often, and we talk almost every day, and you know, he stood up in my wedding and stuff
no way.
too. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Stood up when they're like, does anybody object? He stood up?
No. There was I had a pretty badass wedding party actually. But it was the bakery was an incredible project, and I would love to do it again. But I would say that when the second one shut down, I was kind of like a little bit financially drained, but also a little bit kind of like emotionally drained from all that had happened. Like, you know, I'd spent, you know, blood, sweat, and tears and money building this place, and then for it to just have to go away so quick was a bummer. But I basically had like actively looked for new locations shortly after that, but I was so picky about like the landlord. You know, I was picky about the vibe that I would get from the landlord. Like, hey, is this guy going to be like the last two guys I dealt with? Because I had two different locations, you know, so like that's like renting a semi truck to like move all the ramps from one place to the next and rebuilding them, and a million trips to Home Depot and a million headaches and ball ups, but also learned a ton. And like, you know, it's like nothing's more satisfying than envisioning something and then creating it. So it was cool, and shout out to anyone who like watched the videos and anyone who supported the project. You know, it was definitely awesome. But if I were to do it again, the absolute perfect opportunity would have to fall in my lap, like as far as building wise and location wise and all that kind of stuff, because I actually did have some crazy opportunities, but they were outside of Chicago. They were like far enough where I'm like, damn, you know, if I'm going to be driving there every day, this place is an hour away.
It has to be close.
So that's like, if I add that up, that's 2 hours every day. That's like 2 hours of my, you know, that's like however many hours.
Understandable.
It's just, yeah. So we'll see. I mean, but regardless, I think I learned a lot from it, and can take from that, you know, what I learned onto, you know, everything else that I do. So
it seems like not that long ago, and you could probably give me an exact year, you were on an X Games street podium.
Yeah, it was 2010, and then 2011, I think I got like, I think I got podium or top 5 at the Asian Street X Games, and then I think like 6th or 7th at the LA X Games in 2011, and then in 2012 I was like an alternate.
I was curious, like, did anything happen to why the invites quit coming? Because it seemed like you had pretty good success of those.
Yeah, no, I mean nothing really nothing happened except, so I had surgery. I had like an elective knee surgery. I basically went like 4 years without an ACL, and so during one winter, the winter between 2011 and 2012, I had ACL surgery and came back strong from that. Actually, at the 5-month point, my doctor gave me the clear to ride, and I actually, like, on my own accord said, no, I'm not going to ride yet. I'm going to do therapy for another week, like really hard, and then I'll feel mentally ready to come back. So basically at 5.5 months, I was going to China to the Asian X Games. And this would have been in, I guess, 2012, and I did really well. Like, but I hadn't ridden I basically hadn't ridden for 5.5 months. Yeah. I had ridden a little, like a few days leading up to that, but like a lot of tricks I did in that contest was like my first swing, like I nollie hangered the rail. I'm like, I hadn't nollie hangered a rail in 5.5 months. Here goes, and it all worked. It was like muscle memory, but, it was, I had kind of shown via some trips I went on and a couple contests that I was back at it, but maybe they just thought that they needed some new faces in there. But I was pretty psyched on, I think, like 2008, 2009, 2010. I think it was like me and Garrett Reynolds were the only ones that like were top 5 consistently in all those. I think they started in 2008. But yeah, that was like, I mean, man, it's such an honor to be a part of, and anything X Games related, I'm still happy to be a part of, whether like I did like the sideline announcing, which was like incredibly difficult 2 years ago. That was like my first rodeo, totally.
Then Doyle stole your job.
Which he's more handsome. He's more handsome. He's better on the mic. I actually really enjoyed it and would totally do it again. I would prepare a little differently because I didn't know how to prepare for it, because I had spoke a lot on camera and a little bit live, but never with the earpiece of someone, like an earpiece in one ear of someone telling you, like, you're in the middle of a conversation with a rider who's your good friend, and there's someone in a booth and like yelling in the other ear saying like, yeah, 10 seconds, and you're, to me, I like to like we are now, I like to focus on the conversation at hand, and so to multitask, but I could definitely would and could do it again. But anything X Games related, I think that real street stuff, real BMX stuff is really awesome. That's been long overdue, and I was happy to be a part of that as a judge for a couple of years, and and just riding in them for a number of years, it was just such an honor.
What I was kind of getting at there, I kind of feel like you had success in these contests, and then all of a sudden you were judging them. It seems like there was never really a transition. Like, I don't think you've slowed down at all.
Yeah, I think, I don't know. They have a committee. They have a committee, and I don't know. I'm not really sure. I think like if I look at it numbers wise and whatever, I'm like, dang, maybe, I mean, like, I've definitely proved that I can, that I can do well at these things, and I guess put on a good show, for lack of better words, like maybe bring a little bit different flavor to the table or whatever. But then, I mean, you look at everyone else invited, and I don't know, I'm pretty critical of myself, but I'm also just such a huge fan of everyone else. I'm like, damn, man, they're badass. Like, that, like they deserve to be there and whatever. And so it was one of those things. Obviously I was bummed not to get invited. I can't say that I wasn't, but at the same time, like, it's just one of those things. I guess they just wanted new faces, and maybe they also wanted someone who is younger, and they probably have like demographics of people who watch the X Games and things like that. And I get that, but yeah, I definitely would look at some of the courses, like the year I was an alternate actually was this course that was like a schoolyard or a mock schoolyard, and man, I loved it. They had like a gap to rail on the course that was totally.
Is that the last one that was kind of burly?
A little bit, yeah.
I feel like a lot of them now aren't burly at all, but
right,
there's that one.
Yeah, I look at them now, and I luckily, like, some dudes, like, I mean, all the dudes actually, like, see them with different eyes and do different things. But I do feel like now they're definitely smaller, more tech, and that aspect of it is really crazy. And I do think that aspect of it needs to be explained better to the general public. But I really think like if they want to create a show, sometimes like it would be really cool to do a bigger like hammer course, because there was one year, actually my favorite course was 2009, where they had like this massive like almost El Toro, it felt like almost like El Toro size rail.
I remember Nathan Williams just slaying the rail there.
Yeah, like a lot of crazy stuff went down that year, but it was just huge, and it was awesome. Like I had fun with it, did pretty well that year too. I think I got like 4th or 5th, and but just had a blast, and like somehow manualed that rail twice in a row, like only, first try each time in qualifying and finals. And like,
that's crazy.
I remember Garrett coming up to me and saying something like, Garrett was obviously like winning all those, and he just comes up to me and I was like, dude, Garrett, congratulations, man. You're the fucking man. You like, congrats. He's like, dude, that fucking rail manual, you're a legend, and I'm just like, I'm thinking to myself like, you're a fucking legend, like, but thank you, man, like that's such a huge compliment. And like so it's just cool to have been a part of those. And I think it would be awesome if maybe they switched them up, but I do understand there's like budget constraints of like it's just so much easier and cheaper to do it on the same course as skateboard. But man, it was pretty cool when that year that I'm talking about with the El Toro size rail, and I'm exaggerating a little bit, but it was big. It
was a good size rail, yeah.
It was like, there was an exact mirrored setup right next to it that skaters will ride. So that setup was made specifically for BMX, the huge hammer setup with the huge rail, and there was also a huge gap to down ledge and then a huge out ledge. And there was a exact replica of it, but like shrunk down, like literally a third of its size or half of its size right next to it that the skaters skated on. And it was just kind of cool to like see how gnarly BMX can be, like just next to, because I guess the skaters were complaining that the X Games courses were too big, like the gaps, the drops were too big, the rails were too big, all this kind of stuff. Like they were like, oh, I guess the complaint, and I didn't hear this, I'm just saying this from what I've heard, but I guess the skaters had said like, oh, this is like stuff we'd film for a video part, and we don't want to skate this in a contest, like what if we essentially they were saying like we don't want to send it like we would for a video part in a contest. And I was thinking to myself like, dude, I mean I'd just treat it almost the exact same way. Like I would, if like people are watching and you're with those contests really feel like you're riding with your friends. It's not like a crazy competitive like cutthroat vibe. Like everyone's kind of like feeding off each other. So when I'm just thinking like, dude, go, it's the X Games, man. There's like whatever, 50 grand up for grabs and all this stuff. Like even forget about the money. Like there's just like a million
Prestige.
People cheering. There's a million people cheering for you and watching at home that want to see you do your best shit. Do your best shit. Like that's what you do, and that's what you want to do. And I don't know. I don't feel like it needed to be tamed down necessarily because it's X Games. In fact, if anything, like maybe even ramp it up a little bit, whatever. But it's it's always a weird thing to me. I was like, why would you want something that's like almost like inferior for an event like this? But yeah, I think they do an awesome job in general. Shout out to Tunney and people like Stu that make the real BMX stuff happen, and even the live event stuff, like being behind the scenes and as a sideline announcer and just seeing the inner workings of that gave me a whole new respect for live events, live television, all that kind of stuff, and all the little things that go into it. And what for lack of better words, like a controlled chaos. Like
it's a monster, man.
Yeah. Just the fact that they make it all work and that it all kind of comes together is incredible. So
this year I believe this is your first year judging UCI events. Last year?
Second year.
Second year. How's that experience?
It's been awesome. It's been really tough, but a welcome challenge, because I've judged a lot of contests dating back to like I judged Metro Jam. Like Jay Miron hit me up to judge Metro Jam like in 2002 or something like that.
Were you hurt or something?
Yeah, I was hurt. And Frymouth was like driving out there anyways from Wisconsin, and Miron called me and was like, hey, do you want to be a judge? Like just drive out with Dave and you can stay in his hotel room and whatever. And so I did. So that was like all the way back then. And then over the years would occasionally judge certain things, especially when I was hurt, because whenever I'm hurt, I like to like just be a part of BMX in whatever way I can. And so I judged like a series of events over the years, but when it came time for these, I was going to judge, or I was going to go to like a UCI judges meeting, but it conflicted with my wedding. So that's obviously
can't reschedule that one.
Yeah, obviously slightly more important, So but it all worked out, and I ended up
Budapest. That was your first one. Budapest last year was your first one. That's right.
It's I wouldn't say it's much different from stuff that I judged before, in that it's really difficult, and you just have to really pay attention and really be good at taking notes, and just really have your mental ducks in a row as you're watching these guys shred, but it's a huge responsibility, but it's a huge honor. And I think the responsibility comes in that like a lot of these guys, like life, career, livelihood, passion, all of that can weigh a factor in these things. So I'm just honored that they respect my opinion as a rider, and as a just a long time BMX fan, rider, I guess a little bit of everything, and just they respect my opinion enough to ask me to judge, because there is some subjectivity to it, even though there's so many sort of like concrete things you take into account into a run, like obviously like your difficulty of tricks and how high that you're going, and how are you original or taking a different line, or are you like just comparing the best riders in the world is never easy, but and you have to be kind of like nitpicky, and you got to be strict about crashes and stuff like that, like
foot down, anything.
If people that because you think about it like a video part too sometimes, like would that trick have would he have taken that for a video part, if he was like three whipping a jump and cased or put a foot down, like would he refilm that, or would he do it, so you kind of look at it from that perspective and judge things accordingly, like okay, you can't count that as if he did it clean and landed smooth and stuff like that. So it's incredibly difficult, but I think the UCI's amazing for bringing us out to, we had a big meeting in Switzerland this year where we had a judging summit, and basically talked over so many different aspects of judging, but also did like mock judging, which is interesting, because we did it based on videos, which you're watching footage, and it's not always the same as actually being there.
Videos of the contest,
right?
Okay,
yeah. So we were watching basically contest runs and judging them, and kind of going over like why things were judged a certain way and whatever. But you still, I think like it's so different, and it's so necessary, I think, for the judges to be on site, right there at the course, not watch, when you watch from a TV screen, as a filmer and stuff can look way different when it goes through a camera. Camera can make things look better or worse, or do it justice or not do it justice, or and it's amazing that these things can be watched and televised and broadcasted around the world, but just being a judge on site and actually witnessing it in person, unfortunately those scores have to come in quick, so you have to really, it's really just like anything else, like you really got to do it a lot, you got to watch a lot, you got to keep up to date with what's going on, you have to know the riders, know what's opposite, what's regular.
That's a hard one.
And yeah, it's really hard, and in that aspect sometimes we'll help each other out, because like we don't really, you don't want to influence the other judge's score, but if someone notices that something's opposite, but riders these days are so good that they make shit look so, an opposite whip some guys will make look like way better than any whip I've ever done.
Well, and how some guys will spin regular whip opposite, some guys whip opposite spin
so sometimes sometimes you can like verbalize that stuff and just help each other out, but it's it's a tough job and sometimes a thankless job, but I just feel like it's a responsibility of mine to make sure that certain things, even though like BMX is growing and it's becoming introduced to these, like BMX freestyle is coming into the Olympics and things like that, that it keeps its it keeps a lot of its integrity as far as like even things like style, and you need people that have actually been out there doing this shit to be able to judge the stuff, and it's it's just incredibly important. And I think that, again, like when I got asked to do it, I was instantly like, yes, I definitely want to, not only because I know it's going to be a challenge and I love to challenge myself, but I know that BMX needs this. They need, granted, I've never done a 1080 or 720 double whip or something like I was saying earlier, but I've done a 3-whip before, and I've done like ridden parks. I've ridden park contests. I've like won park series a series of park contests and stuff like that way back in the day, from like the CFB series and stuff. So, and I still ride on a daily basis. So it's just really important that BMXers are in charge of this, and like people that really care. And and that's what it's like at the end of these days of judging. My head's spinning because I've been thinking so fast and long and hard about all the things I'm seeing and how to score it and how to critique it and judge it and stuff. But it's like such a important thing as well that people do it that really care and that's why I think like. I just really, really care that BMX grows in the right way, and that, and then I'm also just blown away. Like there's the fan side of me that I'm like, damn man, I get to watch this stuff like at the best seat in the house, essentially. I get to watch this stuff from like the best vantage point and like just see the most badass stuff, even if I'm not like gonna go and do like the craziest park trick, like seeing these dudes kill it or even like slam and get back up and go pull it or go finish their run or whatever, like that stuff motivates me, even if it's not the same trick or even the same like discipline of riding. Like I go and I watch this stuff all day long, and the first thing I want to do is go back and grab my bike and go pedal the streets of whatever city I'm in, and I do that, and it's like at the end of the day, I'm not burnt out on BMX. I'm just like I want to go ride my bike now. You know what I mean? Like I'm like thank you guys for like motivating me, and like my head's spinning because I was just like watching like the craziest run after craziest run and trying to assess a number value to it. But holy shit, guys, like you guys are the best in the world, and the level of progression is just absolutely insane. So it's kind of where the fan in me comes in, but obviously too, it's an important responsibility to judge. So
I think when you go to one of these big events and you take a look around on the deck or in the stands of the guests and whatnot, the VIP area, you have your guys that love it. You have your guys that are there for work, and a lot more guys are showing up for work now that it's in the Olympics. A lot of guys that if something changed, if the job changed, whatever, they wouldn't be there anymore. And you getting back to like the core aspect of it and the integrity of BMX. I don't really know where I'm going with this, but it's pretty clear who would be here without this shit and who is here because of this shit. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And it's like, you're a dude who's always doing BMX stuff. I'm always doing this stuff. And then there's the guys that are like, I got this job at the Federation, and it's like, maybe you can do a good job and whatnot, but like, you got to keep it in the hands of the riders, and it's got to be legit. It's got to be the people that give a fuck, because you let too many people in that don't really give a fuck. It's just going to be a big mess. Yeah.
And that's the main thing is I'm happy they, like the UCI, for example, I'm happy they hired someone like Bart, who's been around BMX for, I mean, shit, way longer than I was.
I think he said 1934 is when he first started riding.
Yeah. I thought it was 1920s, but yeah, maybe they hadn't maybe they hadn't been
had
shredding
square
by then,
wheels.
But no, I think it's so important, and if it's done the right way, I think it'll grow even more. And I think the coolest thing about it is that, you look at, you talk to like someone, like even some of the best street riders today, and they'll say, oh, I discovered BMX because I saw X Games on TV. And I remember like, when people talked about X Games, when it first came up, people were kind of like, it's, these corporations coming in and doing these things.
Trying to take
like,
our sport.
But man, the fact that like, sure, maybe like you didn't grow up to like do the same tricks that Dave Miro was doing, but now you're pushing BMX in your own direction. I think it's only a good thing, because it'll only introduce more eyes to BMX, and it'll make that like underground, hardcore, unsanctioned, like street, not street, like whatever, like concrete bowl part of it and whatever, all that stuff, like even more cool and respected, I think. And it also provides another avenue. Like there might be a rider that gets into BMX because, his parents maybe want him or her to be a part of a sport. And actually we could talk about women's BMX for a little bit too, because that is like progressing like crazy.
Oh, insane.
That's
Huge.
A whole nother amazing topic that I'm so psyched on. But you take that kid and you think like his parents maybe want him to be part of a sport that's more structured and whatever, and maybe like have, a little bit less like DIY, and maybe have like a sport that's has a little more structure to it, like traditional sports would. But the kid might get into it because of that, but then maybe down the road would decide, you know what, this stuff's getting a little too serious or strict or a little too much, whatever. I'm gonna go do my own thing. Like I'm already I have BMX skills. I'm already a good bike rider, but I want to go grind handrails, or I want to go do this, or build dirt jumps and go ride my own dirt jumps that I built or whatever. I think like it'll just only make people appreciate and open their eyes to all sides of BMX. And I don't think that the Olympics will be like the end all be all of like, that's not just going to be BMX. There'll always be like, you can grab your bike and walk outside of your front door and go fucking do whatever you want on your bike wherever you want, always. It's not like you don't need a license for that, you don't need whatever for that. Like you can just go do it. And I think it's just opens up like another niche in an already niche thing, because BMX is a niche. It's a small little niche community within bicycles, so it's just adds another little niche or another little avenue for people to get in.
I always think of it as a gateway drug. It's the first drug you try. It doesn't matter where you go in BMX, but get your BMX, whether it's from street riding, whether it's from watching an Animal Bikes video, whether it's from watching Mega Ramp in the X Games. Do that, get psyched on BMX, get a bike, and then find your own path.
Totally.
And you're going to experiment and try different things until you figure out what you're psyched on, and there's no right or wrong answer. It's just kind of like drugs. Like you try your first drug, then you're like, maybe I should try heroin. And you're like, this is awesome. I think that's what we're all kind of into here is heroin. I kind of lost it there, right?
We might, I can get you some help probably if you need.
No, I think I'm passing you the drug test. But you know what I mean, though. It's just whatever. Choose your own path, but just like people want to frown upon where this is going, and it's like it's not changing anything. If anything, it's just adding another option and potentially one more outlet for exposure. Like if you're doing cool shit, you're going to be okay.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, look at you. Like you are a street rider that rides essentially for your bike sponsor is a bigger, more corporate brand, but heavily focused on street. The whole team is street riders. None of this is very relevant to what you and the brand you represent do.
Right.
But it's not to say that it's not going to lead there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like
it's and it's just awesome. Like I said earlier, I get motivation from so many different areas, like aspects of BMX. Essentially, when I see someone pushing themselves, like the other day, park practice was going on, and there's obviously like crazy shit going on left and right, and I'm watching the park course, and then I turn my head and I look over at the flatland course, which like flatland to me is something I've always respected, but I still just like I look at it and it all looks hard to me. I don't even know like I don't even know like how to compare the riders really, or like I can of course tell when something looks smooth or not or whatever, but that's tricks. Like I don't even know a lot of the trick names when it comes to flatland, but I watch it and I get inspired.
Just call them all the dump truck.
I watch it and I get inspired, and I just think again that's a whole nother avenue and like little niche within our little world called BMX that is just that's so cool. And I explain that to people because people are like, I love like talking to like even parents at the skate park. Like I talked with a mom the other day who was like there with her kids who were one was on a scooter, one was on a skateboard, and one was on a bike, and they were all kind of like sharing or like switching around vehicles essentially to sort of like figure out what they liked. And it was cool obviously seeing them share and seeing them all try all three, but it was cool because I like basically I think I sold the mom on BMX. I was like just explaining, like I was like, oh, this is my signature bike, I helped design it and whatever.
Were you trying to bang the mom, Brian?
No, of course not. But it was it was I love situations like that because it's like maybe someone has seen BMX, but they've never actually had someone take the time and explain to them some of the intricacies of it. And I think that it's those little things that will make BMX grow. And I think those kids were obviously hyped on BMX. Now now their parents are hyped on BMX, and it just sometimes takes explaining it and introducing people to it in the right way, and relating it to maybe something they're familiar with. But so I get inspiration from a dirt rider, a park rider, a flatland rider, but then also get inspiration from a friend of mine who's an artist or a musician or a wife who's a doctor, and I'm like wow, I shouldn't be tired. She just worked for 18 hours straight, and I'm here complaining that I only got 6 hours of sleep instead of 7 or 8, so it's different things like that. It's you can find motivation in a lot of different things outside of BMX, but also even within it. So
I remember I have a buddy, great guy. I don't know if you ever met him. He worked at a casino in Vegas once, and Chris Doyle was staying there, so he stole the limo and picked up Doyle and comped his room because he was a Chris Doyle fan.
No way.
Anyways, great guy.
That's awesome.
I remember him telling me once where he was like, oh man, you could pick up any chick you want. If you worked at McDonald's, you just have to be all about it. Just be stoked about it. And just be all about it, and chicks will just be like, oh, that's cool. I don't know how I got off on this topic, but it's kind of like what you're saying with BMX. It's just speak on behalf of it. If you're psyched on it, let people know, and it's not, there are plenty of degenerates out there, and it's not all degenerates. There's degenerates in everywhere. It's just an aspect of life,
and sometimes it just takes taking the time to explain to someone why things are a certain way. And there was some people on the street in China the other night who were I did a manual cruising by, and they yelled hey, and I knew here it's hard to explain, but here people are so friendly that you can kind of essentially trust all people. They weren't trying to steal my bike or anything.
Were they Chinese people?
Okay. And they kind of flagged me down, and they were just so curious about my bike. I don't even know if they've ever seen anyone do a manual. So they were, and there was of course a huge language barrier, but I let these guys try my bike, and they of course were
you got a coaster on and
kind of sketchy, and they were we were using Google Translate because the language barrier, and they were asking why doesn't it have brakes, and I was just thinking to myself that's kind of a hard thing to explain, but I'll just explain it in the most kind of basic, simple way I can. And so it's things like that, and I think I left that interaction, even though I didn't even speak the same language. That was a 20-minute interaction with these guys here in China that I think they left that interaction being more psyched on BMX.
Yeah.
That now when they see it on TV or something, they won't change the channel. They'll probably stick around and watch it. Oh yeah, remember when we rode that BMX bike in front of the store the other day? That was pretty cool. Watch this crazy shit these guys are doing on TV. And then, that's one more viewer on the BMX TV show. So then maybe there'll be more of those, or that maybe someday they'll have kids and their kids will want a BMX bike, and they'll be like, yeah, I tried that once and it was really fun. Oh, sure, Billy, I'll get you a BMX bike. It's things like that. I think about that all the time, even in regards to being a dick to security guards or cops. I'm don't do that, because not only will they then be more mean to the next riders that they catch or kick out of a spot, but also that person might have a son or daughter someday that
potential fan right there.
Well, and that person might have a son or daughter someday that wants to ride BMX, and they'll be thinking no, you know what? I met some BMXers once and they were dicks, and I just don't want you associating yourself or being involved in anything like that. Versus if you're just even though you're kind of breaking the rules, breaking the law, if you're somewhat respectful and just say okay, I'm sorry, we'll leave, or explain your intentions, oh, we're not trying to hurt anyone or hurt anything, we're just trying to have fun on our bikes, and kind of explain your intentions, then I think sometimes that can change a person's perspective. And sometimes, sometimes you have police that are oh, that's pretty cool, actually. I'm gonna go do a patrol and I'll be back in an hour. You guys just be gone by then, don't be here when I come back in an hour, or sure, try it another time or two. And then, other times, obviously it's worse, and I've spent time in jail because of BMX and stuff like that. And, but for the most part, I think it's just those little interactions you have to think about, because that janitor at that school or that security guard at that mall or whatever, they might be a potential BMX fan or BMX customer or whatever, and imagine their kid could be the next Garrett Reynolds, but their kid never gets a BMX bike because you were addicted. Just so it's little things like that. Maybe I'm thinking too much into it, but it's.
I think whether it's true or not, it's a good way to live your life. Don't be a prick.
Yeah, don't be a fucking asshole.
I think it's as simple as that. Like maybe something bigger comes out of it, and if not, at the very least, don't be an asshole.
Yeah. And that's not to say I've been perfect or anything. And I'm sure, especially out there riding, like I'm sure I've pissed plenty of people off.
Well, and it's anything. It's anything that guys like myself and you and anybody else that's active in BMX. When you're passionate, emotions come out.
Yeah.
If you are really psyched on this spot, if you're about to get the clip, you're getting kicked out. That's just part of the game. You're gonna be emotional. You're not gonna think about playing it cool. This guy's kid might want a BMX bike.
When
you're 1 foot down away from getting the clip, and you're getting booted, and he's kind of being a prick.
Totally.
It's easier said than done. But I know exactly what you're saying, and it's the right move. We've got about an hour and 28 minutes.
Wow.
Is there anything else specifically you want to get off your chest?
I mean, I guess I would just say, just to all the BMX riders out there, to just enjoy riding. Don't necessarily. I can relate to pushing yourself and wanting to learn the next trick or keep up with the latest tricks or whatever that's going on, but also enjoy the simplicity of it. I love scaring myself and doing something crazy, scary, maybe something that's never been done before. But I also just love cruising the streets, taking it all in. And I think, so I just want to say to just all the riders out there and just anyone listening to this in general, just try not to limit yourself, just get out there and do it, experience things, and, take whatever opportunities you can. And you never know where this little bike will lead you. I basically got a bike because it took me I needed a bike to get from home to school or home to my friend's house. So it's basically point A to point B. And then now I think about it now,
China twice this month.
Right. Yeah. I've been to point X, Y, Z and beyond. And it's just it's just incredible. But I still, despite all that, I like that I can still stop and smell the roses and realize just how lucky I am and how, just how awesome it can be and just the simplicity of it. And so, yeah, I guess essentially what I'm saying is don't take it too seriously, but, also push yourself, challenge yourself, think outside the box a little bit sometimes. And just have fun.
Who's your favorite rider of all time?
Oh my God, that is the hardest question ever.
Not really. I could probably hit you with some math problems.
Yeah,
it would be harder.
But favorite of all time. Can I do a top 5?
You can do a top 5, but the first one you say counts.
Okay.
So you gotta plan accordingly.
Yeah. Maybe Jay Miron. Because of his badassery in all disciplines,
including furniture making.
I also actually just came across a photo of him and I playing hockey back in 2005. I just found it on my computer today, so that's fresh in my mind. But I also grew up around Dave Frymouth. He was the pro from the area where I was from. Well, him and Chad DeGroot, but Chad had since moved to Florida. So the Baco guys, you talk about them back in the day, and they were really influential in BMX in general. And I just was really lucky to have them from the next town over from where I grew up. So Dave Frymouth, definitely always been impressed with his his burly tech kind of style, where he would take tech tricks and take them to a dangerous level. Definitely guys who's a good friend of mine, Corey Martinez, constantly blowing my mind still on a daily basis. Garrett Reynolds, Dennis Enerson. The list could go on and on, but there's a few right there. So yeah.
It's a pretty good list, I suppose. Yeah. Where are you on your own list? Top 4?
No. I'm pretty far down. I'm hyped on, I'm hyped on some of the things I've done, but I'm definitely my own worst critic a lot of times. So,
well, keep up the great work, Brian. I think that BMX can use a lot more people like you as far as a well-spoken, positive advocate that just really seems to have a great grasp on everything. And
I appreciate it. Thanks for doing this. I think things like this podcast, thanks to all the listeners who have survived this hour and a half or whatever it's been. But thank you, Kyle, for doing stuff like this, because I think it's just really important to.
I'm just trying to make friends. I'm a lonely guy.
It's just great to sit down and actually have conversations about this stuff, and it's obviously something we all love. So thanks for listening, and thanks to you for doing these things. things. And
I don't know if you ever hear this, but I think you're one of the few guys too that, like, if you look back at your career, you're a pretty much a model pro rider. I think guys could, as far as being hardworking, as far as relationships with your sponsors, as far as staying visible and changing with the times, because you're from before the Instagram era, but you're still, you're still on top of it. I think a lot of guys out there need to get their shit together and be more like you.
Well, no, I appreciate it, and everyone's good at their own thing. But I appreciate everyone who ever reaches out on social media, like Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all that stuff. Like I try to always just be as responsive and active as I can, and I know it's great to be accessible and great to
it's
be
a cool
able to
tool,
answer.
Cool tool that we didn't have.
Right, yeah, and it's just so amazing to be able to help people in whatever way it is. It's like whether it's learning a trick, even though that's hard to do over like Instagram or something, but a simple text message, but or you're having a hard time in life and just need someone to talk to, and that I can always lend some advice.
I saw something the other day that I think you posted where like you had to call to some school and talk to some troubled kid.
Right. Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
That's awesome.
And I think I feel fortunate sometimes to be able to reach a kid in an age, and it doesn't always have to be kids either. It could be someone who's older than me or younger than me, and I think I feel lucky to be approachable. Like people feel comfortable enough to approach me. I mean, I've seen a lot. I feel like I've seen just about anything. So like it's not like anything's taboo for me. But and I've had friends that have had just about every problem you could think of, or even in my own life, there's been tons of hard times that I've had to get through, and so it's just a blessing that I can really help out in any way. And I think talking to kids like that, he doesn't want to listen to his teachers, his parents, his administrators at school, and he's I think I was able to reach him at an age or at a time in his life when he didn't want to listen to any sort of person of authority. So I think it's just important being a pro or someone that he looked up to just convey a positive message and kind of try to lift him out of his troubles that he's having in school. So
do you think it helped?
I hope so. I think so. Yeah.
Did he know who you were? Like he was psyched on BMX?
Yeah. And I'm about to follow up on it. And thanks to Ryan Fudger for connecting the dots with that whole thing. Because he's the one who they messaged him originally to get me in touch. So yeah, I'm always glad to do stuff like that. Whether it's schools or anywhere. So it's always great.
You'll appreciate this. I just got a text message from Van Homan, and I can only read the top sentence, and it's just found an awesome whiskey bar. So Van's in Tokyo now, so I'm glad to hear Van's doing okay.
Nice.
Our old buddy Van. Brian, you're a wonderful man. I guess it kind of got dark, so maybe you're not going pedaling, but sorry about
I might anyways. You gotta go out there and explore anyways, right? So we'll see.
You're a good man. Keep up the great work, and thank you for the time.
Thank you.
Let's get drunk. Seriously, let's go hang out with Van. All right, that does it for this week. Big thank you to Brian for stopping by the Chinese studio. Be sure to follow him on Instagram @BKachinsky. And until next week, just remember, it doesn't count if you don't pull the rollback. Thanks.